Close your eyes and take a deep breath in. Let the quiet hush of night wrap around you. Tonight's story begins not far away, but in a small, quiet home nestled between trees, where a boy and his grandmother take a journey through a forest where dreams breathe. And trains don't just carry passengers, but carry hearts to the land of sleep. It was nearly midnight. The only light in the room came from a moon shaped night lamp, glowing faintly like it didn't want to wake the stars. Ellie lay in bed, wrapped in his blanket that smelled of lavender and books, his head resting on his favorite pillow. The rain had stopped, but Ellie could still hear tiny silver droplets dancing gently on the rooftop. He blinked up at the ceiling, still wide awake. Across the room, Nani, his grandmother, sat quietly in her rocking chair near the window. She was humming an old lullaby. No words, just a tune, soft and warm, like steam rising from tea. I am not sleepy, Ellie whispered, almost apologetically. Nanny chuckled gently. Not every night is for sleep, my love. Some nights are for journeys. Ellie frowned. Journeys? But where could we possibly go now? To the one place everyone can go, Nani replied, while rising slowly from her chair. If they just know how to listen. She walked to the window and gently pushed it open. A cool breeze floated in, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and something else. Something unfamiliar, sweet, almost spicy, like pine needles soaked in honey. And then he heard it, a sound so faint he almost doubted it. A distant hum, followed by a low, velvety. Ellie sat up. That's a train. Nani smiled and held out her hand. Come, bring your blanket, she said. Still uncertain but too curious to refuse, Ellie wrapped the blanket around his shoulders and padded softly across the wooden floor. He reached for her hand. It was warm, always warm, and steady as stone. As they stepped out of the room, the hallway stretched long, longer than it ever had been. The walls faded into mist, and the floor beneath their feet began to glow faintly, like moonlight woven into stone. And suddenly, they were standing beneath stars. Wind rustled from somewhere unseen, carrying the scent of wildflowers and stardust. Ellie blinked. Nani, are we still at home? In a way, she whispered, we are. The hallway gave way to trees, silently and seamlessly turned into a forest. Giant trees now towered overhead, their bark shimmering faintly under a sky thick with stars. The forest was quiet. Tall silver trees stood like statues. The air was cooler, but not cold. Crickets chirped slowly. Leaves swayed like lullabies. At a distance stood a platform, long and winding, its floor made of interwoven vines that pulsed gently with light, as if breathing. He took a cautious step forward, his blanket trailing behind him like a cape, and then he saw it. At the edge of a glowing platform waited the train. Ellie's eyes widened, and with the overwhelming curiosity, he turned in slow circles, taking it all in. I didn't know something like this could exist, he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. With that childlike awe, Ellie kept walking towards the train. Its windows flickered gently, Its body shimmered like a ribbon of silver fog. The train glowed from within, soft golden light pouring through windows shaped like teardrops. Is this really a train? He whispered. Nani nodded slowly. It is, but not like the ones you see on the tracks and bridges. This one travels through dreams, through thoughts, through wishes you haven't said aloud yet. A soft ding rang out, followed by a slow, smooth opening of a single door. The conductor stepped out, tall, calm, wearing a coat stitched from stardust. Welcome aboard, he said softly. I am Mika. You have been expected. Ellie blinked. Really? You knew I was coming? Oh, not just you, Mika replied, smiling gently. Everyone has a seat on the dream train. Some just don't always find the way. You, however, you listened. He stepped aside and motioned toward the open doorway. Shall we? They stepped inside. Nani gave Ellie's hand a soft squeeze. He looked up at her, uncertain. But where are we going? To dreamland, she said with a warm, steady smile. But the journey is the part that matters. The train's walls shimmered like moon glass. Seats were made of moss and velvet. Blankets hung like clouds, and lanterns floated, glowing softly above them. Choose wherever you like, Mika said, his voice echoing gently down the corridor. Ellie and Nani found a round window seat near the back of the carriage. The glass there was unusually clear, so clear that Ellie could see not just the outside world but little wisps of dreams fluttering in the sky beyond, like fireflies made of memory. With a soft chime and a puff of glowing smoke, the train began to move, not with a jolt or a hiss, but with a long, luxurious exhale, as though the forest itself had released them. Ellie pressed his face to the window. Outside, the trees began to blur, their silhouettes bending and rippling like waves. Golden leaves fluttered beside the train as it picked up speed, gliding silently through the whispering woods. Ellie watched wide eyed, and then just ahead, a sign glowed faintly into view. It said, Next stop, the meadow of firefly memories. The train glided along the glowing tracks, its wheel making no sound, only a soft hum filled the carriage, like a lullaby held in the air. Ellie sat with his chin resting on the windowsill, his breath fogging the glass as the trees rushed by in a blur of navy and silver. Every so often, a flicker of light would dart past. Sometimes a glowing bird, sometimes a floating lantern, sometimes something he couldn't name at all. Beside him, Nani had closed her eyes. Her hands were folded in her lap, and a gentle smile curved the corners of her lips, as if she already knew where they were headed. Ellie turned to her. Nani, he whispered, do you know what's at the end of this? Without opening her eyes, she replied softly, Not the end, the next part. The lights in the carriage dimmed slightly, and the lanterns overhead began to sway. A gentle chime rang out. Then, with the softest sigh, the train slowed and came to a smooth stop. Outside the window, the forest had opened into a wide open field. The sky above was deep indigo, the kind of blue that made stars look brighter. But it wasn't the stars that lit this place. It was fireflies. Thousands, millions of them floating lazily through the air. They blinked in slow, thoughtful patterns, their golden lights dancing like falling stars trapped in a breeze. Ellie pressed his face closer to the glass. It's like they're alive with music. They are, Nani said quietly, her voice almost reverent. This is the meadow of firefly memories. Each light you see is a memory someone cherished, so deeply it refused to fade. Ellie's eyes widened. Can we go out there? Mika appeared at the carriage door, already holding it open. Of course, he said, his voice as calm as ever, but be gentle with what you see. Ellie stepped out. The air was warm and sweet. The grass beneath his feet shimmered faintly, and each step stirred a tiny glow that rippled outward like a breath. The fireflies moved slowly around him, never quite touching him, but close enough that he could feel the heat of memory in their glow. One floated nearer than the rest. It hovered just before his face, pulsing with a soft golden light. Ellie blinked, and in that moment, the firefly shifted. Inside its light, a scene began to unfold. He saw himself, years younger, standing on tiptoe at the edge of a dock, clutching a paperboard. His father was beside him, laughing as they launched together. The water was calm, the wind gentle, a moment Ellie hadn't thought about in years. The firefly blinked again, and the memory faded. Another one floated closer, glowing pale green this time. It showed Nani singing softly while combing Ellie's hair, her voice humming the same lullaby from earlier. Another, a quiet picnic under a tree. Then another, and another. Ellie looked at them all, breathing softly. He turned to Nani, his voice soft. Why do they show me these? Because dreams don't only live in the future, she replied, walking beside him slowly. They live in the past too, in the pieces we carry but forget to look at. Ellie looked down, his fingers curling slightly into the blanket around his shoulders. I didn't realize how many good things I've kept inside, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Nani smiled, her eyes warm. That's what this place does. It reminds us that comfort has a long memory. These memories never left you, Nani said. You just needed the right light to see them. He breathed in slowly, deeply. The air here was different, soothing, almost musical, like each breath polished the heart a little brighter. And as if in response to his calm, the fireflies gathered closer, not to show more memories, but to simply float around him, glowing like golden petals in slow motion. They pulsed slowly, but dramatically, like breathing lights. It was peaceful, like wrapping yourself in a blanket of all the gentle moments you didn't know you remembered. And that's when he noticed something strange. A firefly, larger than the others, was pulsing faintly in the distance. It didn't float like the rest, it stayed still, waited. Do you see that one? He asked. Nani turned, her brow furrowed slightly. No, she said slowly. But if it's waiting for you, then you must go. Ellie walked forward carefully, the lights parting gently to let him through. As he reached the larger firefly, it blinked twice, then flared into full light. But this memory was different. Ellie walked forward carefully, the lights parting gently to let him through. As he reached the larger firefly, it blinked once, twice, then fled into full light. But this memory was different. It wasn't the one he recognized, it showed a figure, vague and misted, standing at a station just like the one he would come from. The figure was holding something small, something wrapped in a blanket. Ellie squinted. The edge of the memory wavered like heat above a flame. He couldn't quite see the face. Just before the image faded, he heard a voice, not aloud, but deep inside him. Not all memories have happened yet. He stepped back, heart fluttering not with fear but wonder. Was that a future memory? Ellie turned to tell Nani, but she was already walking back towards the train. Come, Ellie, she called, her voice softer now, almost a melody. The train doesn't wait forever. As he followed, the fireflies blinked in slow waves, as if bowing goodnight. The memory meadow grew dimmer behind him, and just as he stepped back into the carriage, the train gave a soft purr of approval. The door slid shut. The lights inside warmed once again. The lantern swayed, the glass shimmered, and Mika returned to his post. Ellie sat down beside Nani, quieter now, not sad, not afraid, just curious. The train moved again. Its wheels turned without sound, and the light from the lantern shifted to a cooler hue, soft indigo with hints of silver, like moonlight tickling through water. The rhythm of the journey was now slower, more thoughtful, as if even the train itself was taking time to breathe. Ellie leaned against the window, the blanket still tucked around his shoulder. He felt lighter than before, not because anything had changed, but because something deep inside had unclenched, like a fist opening in the dark. Outside, the landscape began to change. The trees returned, but these ones were different, taller, older. Their trunks were smooth like stone, and their bark shimmered faintly with letters, strange letters, curling and twisting like vines. Some glowed softly, others blinked like fading fireflies. A new sign drifted into view, slowly unfolding as if written by the wind itself. Now arriving, the forest of forgotten names. Ellie sat up straighter. What is this place? Mika, who had returned to the aisle without a sound, placed one hand gently on the carriage wall. This, he said, is where all the names go when they've been forgotten but not lost. Ellie's brow furrowed. Forgotten but not lost? Mika nodded, his voice soft. Sometimes we forget the names of things that once made us smile. A place, a smell, a dream we had when we were 5. They don't disappear, they come here. The train slowed once again and the doors whispered open. Ellie and Nani stepped out into the forest, bathed in quiet light. The air was cooler here, tinged with mist that drifted low to the ground, curling gently around their ankles like sleepy cats. The trees stood still and proud, their leaves silver-edged, whispering just loud enough to make you think they were saying something, but never quite loud enough to understand. Ellie reached out and touched one of the glowing letters on the bark of a nearby tree. It pulsed gently beneath his fingers. And then a flicker. A memory brushed against his thoughts like a feather. He was sitting at a garden table, hands sticky with mango juice. Someone, a neighbor maybe, was laughing as they handed him a cloth napkin. The sun was high, the breeze smelled like basil. He remembered the moment, but not the name of the person in it. I forgot her name, he said aloud. Nani, who stood beside him now, smiled knowingly. But you didn't forget how you felt. Ellie looked around. The forest stretched in every direction. Trees upon trees upon trees, each of them covered in glowing names, softly flickering and blinking in patterns like heartbeats. Some names drifted like smoke between the trunks, not attached to anything, just floating, waiting perhaps for someone to remember. Far off in the distance, he thought he heard laughter, soft and distant like echoes in a dream. Then a sound closer by, a soft tapping. Ellie turned and spotted a small figure seated on a beach of twisted roots. It was an old man, his beard long and mossy, his eyes closed, and in his hands, a book that shimmered like glass. The man opened one eye slowly. Ah, he said, voice like rustling pages. A new traveler. Who are you? Ellie asked gently. A man smiled faintly. I'm the keeper. I collect the names. Ellie took a step forward. What happens to them? To the names? The keeper looked up toward the branches. They sleep until someone remembers or needs them again. But some are never remembered, Ellie said. The keeper nodded. Yes, and that's all right. Even forgotten names have stories, and stories never vanish. He closed his eyes again as if the effort of speaking had spent all his energy. Ellie stood still, his heart full of something he didn't have the name for either. A kind of gentle awe. He turned to Nani. Do I have forgotten names? She nodded slowly. We all do. Even the wind has forgotten its first whispers. As they made their way back towards the train, the mist thickened slightly, curling upward like it didn't want them to leave. Ellie turned once more to look at the trees, now glowing just a little brighter, as if pleased by their visit. The door slid open and they stepped inside. The train waited. As Ellie sat back into the cushioned seat, the blanket around him felt warmer somehow. Not heavier, but fuller, like it carried more stories than before. Mika tipped his cap as he passed. Next stop, he said, is a place you might enjoy. Ellie smiled sleepily. What's it called? Mika winked. The Market of Midnight Wishes. As the train pulled away from Forest of Forgotten Names, the world outside began to shift again. The trees grew farther apart, their silver leaves drifting away into the sky like paper birds. The mist faded, the air cleared, and in its place, twinkling like stars caught in a snow globe, were lights. Not fireflies, not lanterns, but lamps, candles, floating globes, glowing jars, and wishes in glass bottles, each one lighting the path forward. A sign glided smoothly into view, shaped like a crescent moon with curling script etched in starlight. Now arriving, the Market of Midnight Wishes. Ellie's eyes lit up. From the window, he could already see the edge of the market. Stalls woven from vines, umbrellas shaped like mushrooms, counters carved from crystal and cork. Beneath them, shadows moved softly. Shopkeepers, wanderers, cloaked in silks, cloud, and sleep. It's beautiful, Ellie breathed. Mika appeared in the aisle, carrying a small pouch that jingled faintly with each step. He handed it to Ellie. You'll need this. Ellie opened the pouch. Inside were tiny coins, each one made of translucent pearl, stamped with a glowing crescent moon. What are they for? He asked. Midnight wishes, Mika said with a wink. Only good between now and dawn. Stepping off the train, the first thing Ellie noticed was the smell. It wasn't just one thing, it was 100 tiny comfort at once. Cinnamon, rain soaked stone, warm tea, pages of old books, freshly baked bread, jasmine and lavender. The market buzzed gently, not like a crowd, but like a lullaby of lives being lived slowly. Ellie and Nani wandered past the first stall, where a woman with her hair like moonbeams was arranging little boxes on velvet cloth. A sign read, Pocket sized peace of mind, one per dreamer. At another booth, a cat wearing glasses sat beside rows of labeled jars. Laughter from rainy afternoons, hugs you forgot you needed, the smell of childhood. Each jar glowed faintly and pulsed like it had a heartbeat. Ellie stopped at a stand made entirely of driftwood, run by a boy not much older than her. The boy held out a card without speaking. Ellie read it. Trade one worry for one wonder. Ellie reached into the pouch Mika had given him and offered a coin. The boy shook his head kindly. Not with those. Worries are heavier than coins. Ellie hesitated, then slowly he whispered something. Just one line. One small thought that had been trailing behind him all night, like a shadow. A little worry he hadn't known he was still carrying. The boy smiled. He reached under the counter and handed Ellie a folded piece of parchment. Glowing ever so faintly inside, it read, You are already on your way. Ellie held the paper like a leaf, delicate and fluttery in his hands. He tucked it safely into the pocket. Further along, they found a stall where time ran slower. A small woman in a chair made of woven stars invited them to sit and sip dream root tea, infused with calm, brewed in silence. They resisted for a while. Nani leaned back, her shawl slipping slightly, her eyes half closed again. Ellie watched the light on the market flicker and fade like waves, never loud, never fast, just slow magic. And then something curious caught his eye. Near the center of the market was a tall, twisting tree with silver leaves and hanging lanterns. Beneath it, a stall built from sand and wind offered only one thing: unspoken wishes. There were no jars, no signs, no prices, just a mirror. Ellie stepped forward and looked in. At first, he saw only himself, his tousled hair, the blanket around his shoulders, the quiet curiosity in his eyes. Then the reflection began to shift. It showed him standing in a future he didn't recognize yet. Older, braver, still holding wonder like a lantern. It wasn't a prediction, it was a possibility. A gentle voice, not spoken aloud, echoed through him. Some wishes wait for you to believe in them. He blinked, and the reflection softened back into his own face. Nani joined him beside the mirror. Did you see something? she asked. Ellie nodded. I think I saw who I could be. Her eyes twinkled. That's a good wish. As they returned to the train, the market waved goodbye with its lights, blinking in slow patterns like a sky full of wings. Ellie looked back only once, and even then, the glow of the stalls shimmered into memory like candlelight in wind. Back inside the train, the lights dimmed again, and Mika's voice drifted gently down the corridor. Next stop, the lake of listening stars. The train slowed again, more gently than ever before. So gently, in fact, that Ellie almost didn't notice they'd stopped at all. There was no sound, no chime, no hiss of brakes, just stillness. Outside, the world had turned to silver. A great still lake stretched out from the forest's edge, its surface smoother than glass, reflecting the stars above so perfectly that it was impossible to tell where the sky ended and the water began. A new sign rose from the mist, shimmering like a breath. Now arriving, the lake of listening stars. Speak gently, and they will hear. Ellie stepped off the train in silence. Even the soft crunch of his footsteps on the dew laced grass felt too loud for this place. Nani walked beside him, her shawl now draped loosely over one shoulder, her hands folded calmly in front of her. They didn't speak, they didn't need to. The air was still. A small wooden dock led out onto the lake, its edges glowing faintly like it was carved from moonbeams. They followed it one step at a time until they reached the very end. And then they sat, just sat, wrapped in silence, wrapped in sky. The lake didn't ripple, the trees didn't sway. Time, it seemed, had decided to rest here for a while too. Ellie leaned forward, his chin resting on his knees. It's like the stars are listening. They are, Nani whispered, but only when you don't try too hard to speak. He let his eyes roam the sky reflected in the water. Galaxies, constellations, pinpricks of light drifting slowly across the mirrored surface. And then, very faintly, one of them blinked. Once, twice, and sent a shimmer across the lake. He tilted his head. Did it respond? Nani smiled, half lidded. Some stars are still dreaming, some are wide awake, and some are waiting for you to say what you've never said. Ellie thought for a long while, and then quietly, so softly, he wasn't sure it even counted as speaking, he whispered into the stillness, I'm glad I came. A star blinked in return, softly, gently, like a nod. And then another, and another, until the sky and water shimmered like a field of fireflies, echoing nothing but peace. Nani reached into her pocket and pulled out a small round stone. She handed it to Ellie without a word. He held it gently for a moment and then tossed it gently across the water. Instead of rippling, the lake caught it, and the light around where it landed pulsed outward in perfect rings as if the stars themselves had inhaled. In his mind, he heard nothing, and in that nothing, he found everything. Eventually, they stood again. Ellie looked down at the lake one last time. The stars no longer blinked, They simply glowed, constant, calm, as if content just to be. Back aboard the train, the lights were dimmer now, sleepier. The lanterns had curled inward slightly, glowing more softly like eyes slowly closing. Even Mika's voice had grown quieter. Last stop, he said. Dreamland. The train moved slower now, not because of the tracks, but because of the hour, as if the time itself had grown drowsy and begun to sway with the rhythm of the wheels. Ellie rested his head against Nani's shoulder. Her breathing was steady. Her shawl smelled faintly of saffron and sleep. The window beside them no longer showed trees or lakes or sky, just a soft, silvery glow, like the inside of a cloud or the light behind closed eyelids. No words were spoken. There was nothing more to ask, nothing more to learn. Only this. The dream train rolled forward, cradled by mist and memory, until the lanterns above flickered one by one and dimmed. Only the faintest golden light remained. The hum of the engine slowed to a sigh. The carriage exhaled. Outside, a new platform appeared, not built of wood or vines or stone, just light. A warm, glowing path that curved gently into the unknown. A sign appeared and disappeared at the same time. Dreamland. The door opened, but no one stepped out. Because sometimes, dreamland isn't a place you arrive at with your feet. Sometimes, you arrive with your breathing, with your stillness, with your heart gently turning inward like a flower closing at dusk. Ellie closed his eyes. The blanket around him felt like a cloud, the hum of the train like a lullaby in his chest. And the last thing he heard was the wind whispering through the stars. The train sighed and the last lantern faded. And now, dear traveler, your journey too has arrived. There's nowhere else to go tonight, only deeper into rest, deeper into quiet. Let go, breathe gently, and let the dream train carry you the rest of the way. Good night and sweet dreams.